All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another Mass Medic webinar. Today, we're talking about product line transfer, make or break your success by choosing the right CDMO partner. I'm pleased to present this webinar today from Nissha Medical Technologies. If you haven't met me, I'm Anna King, a marketing coordinator at Mass Medic. And if you're not familiar with our organization, we're a membership-based trade association for the medical device industry. We work to promote our ecosystem in New England through connection, education, events like this, advocacy, and awareness. I do have a quick housekeeping note before I turn it over to our presenters. This webinar is being recorded, so all registrants will receive the recording after the presentation. We're also allocating some time for Q&A, so make sure to put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Now I'm pleased to turn it over to Amy from Nissha. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you to Mass Medic for having us on today. My name is Amy Jerry. I am the Marketing Development Manager for Nissha Medical Technologies. And we will be joined today by David Shea, our Business Development Manager, Carolyn Goldenberg, our Engineering Supervisor, and Mark Gilson, Manager of New Product Development. As Anna mentioned, we will be taking all questions at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to use that function at the bottom of your screen. And also we will be getting in touch with everybody at the end of the presentation, handing over a copy of this, and any questions that we don't get to, we will be following up with after. So at that note, I will hand this over to Dave.
All right, thank you so much, Amy. And thank you all for joining us today, and Happy New Year to everybody. Really what we want to talk about this morning is, choosing the right CDMO partner and how it can make or break your next product line transfer. Medical device companies are making the decision to use third-party partners every day for design, development, and manufacturing needs. And when it comes down to making that decision to either buy externally or do it internally, there's a few things that we're going to review today that really are important topics to discuss. One is the ability to scale production without major investment. Two is the potentially to decrease time to market using the CDMO's dedicated resources and manufacturing expertise. And lastly, it frees up resources for you as the OEM to work on other projects, whether that's money and or time. So, once now you've made that decision to work with a third party, who is that right fit? Making that right choice between either a CM or a CDMO can really make or break the success of that product launch. So let's talk about that a little bit further. So CM versus CDMO, contract manufacturer versus contract development manufacturing organization is really the big difference. And the D, sometimes can be design, development, whatever it is you want to use that for. But, the most important thing is to understand what your needs are and align them best with what that organization can provide you. If your current production line, you're confident in it, you feel like there's really not much changes to be made, then a CM might be a great fit for your needs. But understand that, there are always hidden situations within that production line, as we all know, that you may not realize until after that transfer starts. And then you may say to yourself, boy, we really could use some additional resources from our partner to help us get this line up and running. And that's truly where the D in CDMO shines. A CDMO can really handle all the innovation, development, manufacturing work, everything you need to do prior to getting that product up and running. It really could help include regulatory support, and we're going to talk about all these different things here today. And lastly, the goal of a CDMO is truly to be that strategic partner with you, the OEM, not just the manufacturer. We want to partner together and grow together. Hey, Carolyn, when it comes to design and development, what are some of the priorities you start thinking of when you're working with an OEM on a new product design and from our side of the support?
I would say one of the most important areas to focus on is establishing a strong communication plan, understanding all the areas of focus and the requested program improvements at the start of the project. Additionally, developing a detailed plan to reach all of these goals.
Excellent, excellent. Mark, how about if you're working from the program management side of the business on a new product manufacturing launch with a partner?
Sure. One of the big things that we like to really focus on is a clear set of defined requirements up front. So a real good, clear understanding of what's expected from the CDMO and also what the customer's expectations are, right? So by defining the requirements of the program up front, it really helps us to better support our customers in the long run, right? So it's really important to understand what all those requirements are, how we're going to execute them, and then how in turn you manage them moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all things that we would provide as a CDMO to the market. So, now that we've talked about that a little bit, let's talk a little bit about this product line transfer. One of the terms used often is lift and shift, right? Something we use here at Nissha. And it really isn't just a term to describe a product transfer. This is a time where you can really work hard to add value during this lift and shift. Often a straight lift and shift is expected to be, a fast moving process without much input or change. You're planning on just kind of taking your production line and hoping that you could move it to a manufacturing partner. But all too often, things like that aren't that simple. So it's important to have a CDMO partner that can help make improvements to limit risk during this move or this manufacturing transfer. The last thing you need is time at the end to try to fix things when you could have done some things up front. While you're moving that production line, it really should be looked at as an opportunity for improvements. Having a full service dedicated program management team and an engineering team ready to provide design and development support can really help provide cost savings and increase throughput on even the oldest legacy production line. The perfect time to take advantage of that is while you're doing these changes, because you're going to have to do a new filing with the FDA for a location change. Sometimes there may be some other things with QMS systems of the new partner you're working with that you're going to have to do some filings. So at this time, it's a great time to take a look at the production, take a look at the device and see if there's some improvements that could be made that'll benefit both parties in the long run. Up on this slide here, we have a list of common problems, some CDMO initiatives. So there's a lot of opportunity to work together, but Mark, from the project management side of this, what are some of the most common challenges you've run into?
Yeah, some of the big things that we've seen in the past is really making sure you've got the right expertise, to support the lift and shift, right? So, really making sure you've got solid manufacturing engineering and support to be able to understand, the complexity of the lift and shift and the equipment that's maybe being moved and or the sub equipment that's being moved, right? Some of the things that you run into, examples being like, maybe look at your molds, right? And your molds may be closer to end of life. So as you start to utilize those, you start to see, issues within the manufacturing process, right? Because it's a mold, it's maybe an end of life, and now you've got to try and make that work within the system. So it's really, really important to really analyze all of the components that are associated with the lift and shift and make sure that when you move them and get them set up and get them running, that you've got the right expertise and you have a thorough and solid understanding of where it was and how it's going to be set up in the new facility.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Carolyn, it's not often engineering may feel like they should be involved here, at least from the manufacturing side, but often our engineering staff does get brought in on lift and shifts. When you're asked to bring in, be brought into some of these programs, what are some of the common things that you're brought in to help fix?
Yeah, Dave, there are a few areas that engineering are typically brought in for fixing during a lift and shift. These include reducing cost of the product or the process, validating the current product for new markets or an extended shelf life, developing the next generation of a device or fixing a failing in a current device to close out any customer complaints they've been having, and to redesign a product to add beneficial features to give the product a competitive advantage against other products in the market. Because overall, you don't know what you don't know. A CDMO can uncover these unknowns for you.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you. One thing that we use in our organization is a real strong stage gate process during this, to take it from that learning and observation phase of where that production line is now and understanding through partnership how do we get to commercial manufacturing? And as we see down there below, there's a lot of things to be done in throughout that process. So the goal is to get you to manufacturing as fast as possible with as least amount of, hiccups and satisfy all needs. So some of the common pitfalls that we've run into over the years, are listed here. And it's important that, when you set up or choose your CDMO partner, it's an open line of communications. Try pull back that curtain on that current production line. At the very beginning of our stage gate, we showed where we want to, get in there. They should want to get in there, take a lot of time on the current production line to try to see some things that may or may not, be in the work instructions. Something like what we call out here is travel knowledge, little nuances that are maybe not documented in the current process. Something that somebody that's been working on that production line for 10, 15 years has been doing off to the side to help things work well. Those things can often be, issues down the road before you make that switch. So it's important to understand through that process, taking that due diligence and understanding the current production line before you make that change. Hey, Mark, how about on the testing and validation criteria? Where have you seen some pitfalls?
Yeah, right. This is really critical, right? Because you're taking a product in a system that's already validated and operating efficiently, and you're relocating it or moving it to another location. So really understanding the test criteria and the validation criteria to be able to, start your new processes back up is really critical. So assuring you've got, solid partners and folks within that industry to support that operation and support that move is really vital, and making sure you've got the expertise and a good understanding of what the process is going to be within that test and validation process moving forward. So that when you get up and running and you're starting, that you don't run into any, delays or criteria that would basically not allow you to operate and start making product as quickly as you could.
Excellent. Thank you. How about Carolyn? How about any outdated processes that could lead to some pitfalls?
Yeah, grandfathered in processes and equipment may not be ideal for the modern age or for the location that you're moving to. We need to be able to evaluate the products, processes, and the related risks to see if they meet the new standards. Regulatory bodies are constantly changing requirements, and we need to ensure that those are all understood and met.
Excellent. Thank you. And lastly, single source suppliers. I spent the last 10 to 12 years in the resin world. And as we all know, single source resins can cause headaches. I watched it firsthand over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of other things where, there may not be the opportunity to do anything about it. But if you do have the opportunity and there is an ability to maybe dual source something to eliminate risk, to really build up that supply chain, make it a little more robust, this is a great time to maybe take advantage of that, is those single source suppliers. Or is it something that you're sourcing offshore and now you're moving this production near shore and you want to be able to bring that closer to where you're doing your production? Because that might make sense, right? So this is a really good time to take a look at those type of things and see if we can't make it a better process in the future. Now that we reviewed some of the, advantages and what a CDMO can bring to you, and you've chosen, maybe I want to do this. Well, let's talk a little bit about what that ideal partner, should look like. Can't say it enough. I know I've said it a few times already, and I think Mark has said it as well. Make sure you're aligned your goals. Is that partner you're looking to grow with in growth mode as well? We'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But are they, in that same part of their business that you are, where they want to grow, they want to, they have room for you, and they can support all your needs from an engineering, design, development, whatever that challenge may be. Cost management. Can the CDMO, potentially bring that design and development support to potentially vertically integrate or something like that, right? Where they can bring some cost, bring some value, do something for you that you're getting now at an outsourced supplier, bringing in a third party. Well, if they can do it vertically at one of their other locations or one of their other centers of excellence, maybe that can help control costs and also strengthen that supply chain. Do they have the expertise to help the, design and process? Right now, if you're deciding to work with somebody, most customers are looking to eliminate partners or eliminate people on their list, if you're going to bring somebody new in, can it help you in the future with new design, new process optimization? Do they have that expertise to work with? So these are some things that you really should look for in that partner. And, now that we've defined some of those things, we'd like to talk a little bit about what some of the questions you can ask or some of the things that you might want to try to understand with that CDMO before you jump in. Some of the things we're going to review are, cost and speed to market, quality and regulatory, scalability, product optimization, as well as that supply chain piece we've talked about a little bit. Mark, from the program management side, can you help us understand, where are we able to help customers with cost and time management?
Yeah, sure. Right. It's really important to understand your costs up front, right? So spending the time up front in the initial review and process as you're starting to make a decision on who you may use, it's really important to take the time and understand what the proposal is in front of you, what the costs are that are associated with that, and then understanding that whole process moving forward, right? So asking the questions as to how a particular company does and manages their programs moving forward. Like, what do they use for their major systems? How do they identify risk? How do they identify when things may go off the track, and how do they get back on track, right? Those are all really key things to start asking up front, so you're not having to deal with those down the road. The ability to understand the reaction plan when something happens, because typically it always does. It's really important to really have a good structure and understand how that will work, and then what are the opportunities to get back on track, and how are they going to do that? It's really key in the upfront process when you're reviewing.
Excellent. And then Mark as well, how about on the quality and regulatory piece?
Yeah, sure. So, clearly, everybody has a lot of quality folks within the business, right? I think it's really important to try and align your two quality systems, right? Trying to make sure that they, I hate to use the word mirror, but ideally that's what you want. You want them to mirror each other as closely as you can, so that there's not a disconnect between what you expect from a quality perspective and what your potential, CDMO offers as a quality perspective, right? So making sure those two align with each other, and you at least minimally you agree, right? It's really important. And then also understanding the process and the systems in place as they need to be addressed, right? So they're making sure that everybody's clear on what the definitions are, the testing criteria, and everything else moving forward. So again, you're totally aligned up front, so you're not having to deal with that in the middle of the process.
Yeah, excellent. And making sure that CDMO has all of those, resources available. Scalability, we'll talk about that a little bit. As I mentioned on the last slide, are they looking to grow with you? Is the company financially healthy? Are they somebody that you want to partner with? Are they in growth mode? Can they support your needs? Not only your current needs, but your future needs. Does the CDMO have the ability to scale maybe even a low-cost region, such as nearshore or offshore? Are they able to bring you those cost containments or cost reductions by doing things in a low-cost region, if that's a need, right? I mean, it all is about understanding and making sure you know what your goals are going in and making sure they align with that CDMO. Carolyn, how about in product optimization? You're on mute.
Apologies.
All good.
So if you want to be able to change up your product, you should be able to find a CDMO that has the capability and know-how to review the design and evaluate the risks and benefits of each function and mechanism. Determine if they have the know-how in order to reduce component count and the complexity of your design. Evaluate if they know the DFX, so design for manufacturability or design for assembly, to ensure that you have low-cost, reliable product. Overall, make sure that their design process and their assembly process are aligned, so that when you flow from the design into assembly, it goes seamlessly.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll talk a little bit more about supply chain. I know I mentioned it a bit on the last slide with single source, but also, does that CDMO have the team in place and the process in place to manage your supply chain needs? Obviously, that has changed. That conversation has really changed over the last couple of years. And are they thinking about the future? Are they thinking about eliminating risk wherever possible? Can they vertically integrate, as I talked about before? Can they purchase and source things globally Do they have that structure in place to really manage that supply chain and partner with you to where you want to be in the future and where they want to be in the future? So supply chain, cannot be understated, and something that, we've been spending a lot of resources on. All right, excellent. So we're moving forward here, and Carolyn, from the engineering side, let's discuss a little bit about these pillars for success.
Yeah, Dave, there are 4 main areas that we like to focus on: sustainable engineering, process optimization, design for excellence, and product lifestyle management. When I think of sustainable engineering, what really comes to mind is continually improving product and processes, not just during the lift and shift. Evaluating all of the routine data to make sure we can improve the workflow, reduce scrap, and prevent holdups in production. For process optimization, there's always an extensive process validation routine when it comes to medical devices, but it all really starts at engineering studies, where we understand the process and the possible failures in order to head off any issues, really understand how everything's made from the very beginning of the process, any imaginable modes of failure. And then, of course, there's always installation, operation, process, product performance qualifications, and additionally, method validations and gauge R&Rs. We like to use statistical analysis to ensure safe, reliable product and reduce scrap, and also reduce the quantity of products that you have to make for these validations. For design for excellence, we have to determine the must-have features and the like-to-have features and evaluate the cost and benefits of each in order to prioritize what you really need to get your product out. Focus on the DFX, design for manufacturability, assembly, cost and procurement, and testability. That brings us to product lifestyle management. Having a detailed design and development plan from the get-go will ensure you have thoroughness. Make sure that all the deliverables are executed in a timely manner and we have proper change control. This will make sure that everything has proper traceability for the whole process and nothing gets left behind.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carolyn. So lastly, this strategic alignment, I know I've mentioned strategic partnership a few times, and as we discussed today, there's a lot of advantages to working with that full service CDMO, right? It's somebody to help improve processes, reduce cost, reduce risk, offer you a lot of different opportunities, whether it's offshore, nearshore, things along those lines. And so the thing that we like to say here at Nissha Medical Technologies, over the last 30 years, we've evolved into a lot of different things, but now we're truly a full service CDMO. And how that's really happened is just trying to be the best partner we can be to our customers. We want to be here to support your design needs, your development needs, your lift and shift needs, whatever they may be. We want to be here to support that. We have global centers of excellence all over the globe that are really set up to support our customers in specific regions and also provide expertise in specific categories. Our program management team, as we discuss a little bit here today, I've seen it in action over the last, year or so I've been here. And it's really something that our customers do appreciate, is having that dedicated program management support on all their projects. So in closing, I'd like to thank you all for attending today. While product line transfers can be straightforward exercises, oftentimes you can run into things that may not be apparent at the start of that project. And you really want to make sure that the partner you select has that expertise and that support that a full service CDMO can really bring to you to ensure the best outcome for you and your organization. So thank you all today, and we'll jump into some Q&A. Amy, I don't know if anything came across, but.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have some questions. So first, I do want to thank, Dave, Carolyn, Mark for the presentation, but let's jump right into some questions. All right, our first one, Dave, I'm going to direct this to you.
Okay.
How does a CDMO help the customer get through the FDA regulatory filing process?
Okay, great question. Most CDMOs should have some resources or some competency within their organization, especially if they're dedicated to the medical device space, right? So we are a dedicated medical device CDMO. They should have those supports internally to help with some submissions and regulatory submissions with their OEM partner. One thing here at Nissha that we have is we do have a full regulatory staff because we do have some of our own products that we put out to the market, Nissha branded products. So we are very versed in working with regulatory bodies across the globe. We work with the FDA, the EU, we have products filed in Japan and Brazil, many, many different organizations across the country. So at the end of it all, we're here to support you. Most CDMOs should be able to as well, but we bring a little more having our own team on staff. But in the long run, as we all know, the customer owns the regulatory filing, but for sure the CDMO should be able to bring some extra valuable resources in that arena.
Thank you. Okay. Next question. Carolyn, I'm going to give this to you. You've discussed design capabilities, lift and shift, and manufacturing transfers. What about help with new products?
That's a great question. So some CDMOs will also have a design department. Some may not. We currently have a few different design departments at a few different sites, and we follow 5 different phases typically. So these include concept and feasibility, which is where all of the concept ideation comes in, figuring out what problems are needed to be solved, whether it's a new product or an existing product that has some failings, and down selecting from those concepts. Then we go into phase 2, which is detailed design. That's where we refine the design and come up with any sort of product specifications that we're going to test to. We do tolerance analysis, finite element analysis, some preliminary testing on what we call breadboards, which are simulations of parts of a device in order to prove it out. And ultimately, the goal of this phase is to get to design freeze. After that, we go to process development, which is where we determine how we're going to be making the device, figure out any sort of tooling for assembly or testing, and really develop out those processes, validate our test methods, and make sure everything's able to be assembled in a smooth and seamless fashion. Phase 4 is verification and validation, which is mostly protocols and testing. So proving out the device that it meets all of the needs of the customer and is also safe and reliable. After everything has been verified and validated, we move on to product launch, which is pilot production of the device and helping with any initial launch and transitioning to manufacturing. Any devices that come through our design department can enter through any of these phases. We don't require that they start at phase number 1 and go straight through to phase 5. It's completely customizable to whatever the customer needs.
Awesome. Thanks, Carolyn. Next question. I'm going to give this one to Mark. You mentioned multiple site locations. Can you expand upon them more and the capabilities at each site?
Sure. So as Dave mentioned, right, vertical integration today is probably back on the table and a little bit more important than maybe it was, years ago when people started outlining it and out basic sourcing a lot of the work, right? So it's really important to have a good understanding of what the capabilities are. One of the things that we have here at Nissha is we have multiple sites, and not just in the US, right? So multiple sites across Europe and Asia and low-cost countries, right? And a lot of those sites have specialties. So some of the sites have specialties in metal. Some of the sites are very good in metrology. Other sites are specific in just manufacturing and that type of thing. So it's really important to pick somebody that maybe has what you're focusing on and what you think is necessary within your organization. Another key is looking for, those SMEs, right? So those really expert folks that are in the organization that may be able to support you in what you're trying to do and what particular product line you're trying to offer, whether it's scopes or whether it's patches or whatever it happens to be, right? So really having experts within the field is really important. And that's another key that Nissha offers as part of our technology, right? Is we have a lot of those those experts within specific fields to be able to support you and do that within the industry that, really is important in how you're designing and how you're establishing, your criteria.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Mark, I'm going to actually give you another one. This is a question about post-sale service or RMA management. It's basically talking about potentially any devices being exported or imported back to the country of manufacture or then returned back to the customer. So sometimes is a sticking point that's overlooked in line transfers, and then it's a scramble to figure it out later on. How does Nissha help their customers with this?
Yeah, I think that, kind of comes back to what I talked about a little bit earlier, right? And really understanding, in the onset of the opportunity, right? Making sure that, those questions in those particular situations are addressed and answered, right? So that you're not having to try and play catch up in the end, right? So I think it's really important to address those. And that's certainly something that, we at Nissha it's one of the items on the list as we start to go through the process and make sure that, we have a thorough understanding of where the product is going to, end up and what regulatory agencies are affected, and making sure that we can handle and manage that for you moving forward.
Yeah, I know a lot of the things, we do down in our site, our low cost region, the Dominican Republic, comes back to the States, right? So there's a lot of that has to happen up front, whether it's going to go to a sterilization facility and then to a customer's warehouse or straight to a customer's warehouse, but all of those will be defined up front, and something that we're very familiar with. Yeah, and even to, kind of piggyback on that, it's the opposite too, right? We have a lot of customers that don't reside in the US, right? So, their models may be a little different when they're trying to, have sales in the US, right? So it's really important to, be able to talk within those regions and understand what the requirements are, because they may not have an understanding of what the requirements are in the US, as an example, especially if they're, not from the US specifically and they're not used to those regulations. So it's both, it works both ways. Yep.
Okay, next question. A little bit follow up to that, Mark. If something was already validated, do you have a process or procedure to minimize the need to conduct another full-blown validation when moving an existing product line?
I mean, yes, I guess the answer would be yes, right? So one of the things we always try and strive for is to do, I hate to use the word minimal, but we try to not overdo, right? So, a lot of times you can do too much, right? Just because you're maybe risk adverse and you don't necessarily want to take any chances. But, in our roles and what we're positioned to try and do all the time is be able to do what's required, but not overdo, right? So yes, so in most cases, we always try and see what the opportunity is to utilize what processes, what validations, and what certifications are already in place. And is there a way to do, similar to or like to that type of thing as we go through the process, so that we don't have to maybe retest 100%, or we don't have to do, full-blown qualifications on everything, right? It's one of the areas that we strive to try and bring value to our customer and not overdo, because that's costly and it's time involved. So it really changes both economics on that side.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go right into the next question. And Mark, I'm also going to hand this back to you. How is the VAVE and cost down opportunities handled? Are they handled under NRE or during routine weekly, monthly, quarterly meetings? Talk a little bit about that.
And Carolyn, I guess maybe you might be a good one for this more so than me, right? Because it's part of the engineering opportunity. Cost downs are really one of the areas that we look at. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. I can answer part of it, but I think you're probably more suited to answer this.
No, I can take that question. So it depends on how extensive of a cost down opportunity you're looking at. If you're looking to really cut down on the cost of your product or the process, typically we would handle that under NRE, and we would go through the processes that I mentioned, the 5 phases, and make sure that we get the product to meet all of your requirements. If it's just to sort of optimize the process here and there and not a major effort, then it would typically be done during routine cadence. So it depends on the effort and how much you're trying to change.
That's one of the areas that when we're in the initial discussions with the customer about, it's one of the areas that we spend time on, right? So, our goal is to clearly define, what that cost is and what we think we can do, right? And, try not to make it an estimate. We try to make it, a real number, so that you have as a customer, you have a real number in front of you. Certainly things can change through the process, but ideally, it's really that upfront opportunity in the review of the process, the review of the proposal, making sure that everything's covered to make sure that you have an understanding of what your potential costs are to do something.
And then also, I've been in most of our sites, and all of our sites have weekly team meetings to understand a production line, especially when it's in a newer, right? It's been on the floor for a year, 2 years. And we're looking for feedback from the floor. Where do they see room for improvements? We incentivize people to bring ideas and bring room for improvements. And then we would pass those back to the customer during, whether it's a quarterly call or whatever a review is, and offer those as ideas for improvements. So we're constantly looking to bring that value.
Yeah, maybe it's important too, maybe just to mention, one of the things, how we kind of operate to your point, Dave, on a daily basis, or I'll call it a short-term effect, right? So one of the things we use Agile. We use they're called scrums and sprints, right? So we kind of have a look ahead, every 2 weeks as to kind of what our particular, workload is, and what are we going to try and execute? What actions are we going to try and execute within a 2-week period? And then every day, those particular ideas and actions are reviewed to see where we are, and we basically say whether or not we think we can still meet that or not. And then we continue to do that. It's a point-based system, and sometimes it's based on time, sometimes it's based on effort. But in theory, that gives us a chance up front to load the resources that we've got appropriately to make sure that we're not overloading them. And then in turn, it's an agreement when we start that particular new sprint. Again, they last 2 weeks at a period, that we can basically manage all of the risks and manage all of the actions that are associated within that particular 2-week period of time, and then move forward from there every 2 weeks.
Excellent. Okay, those are some great questions. We are at an end to the questions right now. So before I hand it back over to Anna, I want to thank everyone, especially Dave, Carolyn, Mark, for putting this together today. And thank you for everyone for joining us. If we do have any more questions coming in, we will be following up immediately after to answer. And also we will be sending out a copy of the presentation along with our contact information. So please feel to keep reaching out. We'd love to continue the conversation. And that's it. I'll turn it back over to Anna.
All right, wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to the Nissha team for such a valuable presentation. We cannot put on great educational content like this without your support. So thank you. And with that, to learn more about upcoming MassMedic events, check us out on social media or visit massmedic.com. But thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.